In the 1990s, a team of cavers working in the southwestern part of France made a really unusual discovery. After digging through some earth and debris, they uncovered a cave that had naturally had its entrance sort of collapsed and covered way back in the Pleistocene period. And we're going to get a little bit more into dating later on, but just for now, you should know that this cave had been closed off for thousands and thousands of years. But despite all this, despite how long this cave had been sealed off from the world, it turns out one of our ancient relatives seems to have spent quite a little bit of time here. Now, we've talked about Neanderthals obviously on this channel before. We love our ancient Neanderthal friends here in the Lost Realms. We're very, very fond. And the last time we talked about them, I got a little sad. We were talking about some of the last Neanderthals to walk our planet. Well, today I want to do the opposite. Let's look at one of the oldest known Neanderthal mysteries left to us. And to do that, we have to go to this little cave in the southwest of France. Because once these cavers got through that entrance, they found themselves faced with about a 30-meter shaft, or rather a passageway that they were able to make their way along, though it wasn't always easy going. At times they were reduced to a literal crawl, getting on their hands and knees just to be able to progress. But after those 30 meters, they encountered something extraordinary. It was a huge open area known today as the main chamber. Near the entrance to this main chamber were scattered the remains of large Pleistocene fauna. They also found evidence of bears, hibernation hollows where they'd come to sleep in this cave, and evidence of their claw marks. There was something made by our Neanderthal friends in this cave that's going to be the subject of our episode today, not anything done by these bears. Because after going through this large open chamber until you're around 336 meters down from the main entrance, down in the deepest, darkest part of the cave where there's no natural light, the cavers discovered what's now described as ancient circular structures created by Neanderthals. And this spot would end up proving to be one of the oldest known structures, man-made structures of any kind by any type of man from anywhere in human history. But it would take them a while to figure out just how old this mysterious construction was and to start to piece together what they were looking at here, but we'll get into all that. We'll cover too what we know of this place, and we'll get back to that dating issue like I promised, and also how we know that Neanderthals built this and not early Homo sapiens say. But first, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Lost Bits. It's lovely to see you. As always, I am your host, Marie. And I'm so excited to share with you today a little bit of the story of the subterranean structures of the French Neanderthals. And guys, if you've watched my channel before, oh my goodness, you know I love underground stuff, but I'm also kind of scared of underground stuff. But I've been so excited to share with you a few details of this one. I've been reading about a little bit now for a couple of months, and there's a lot to unpack here. We won't be able to cover everything right now, even if we want to, because a lot of this information has actually only become available in the last few years. Even though this place was initially discovered in the 1990s, its value wasn't really as appreciated at first as it should have been. But in the last few years, there's been lots of different info coming out, and I'm so excited. And I missed you guys. This is our first new bits in a while. I was so excited to get the mega pack. And then the first part of Herxheim, that I didn't have time to make any more of these for a little bit, but I do. I missed our weird history chats, and oh my goodness, it's time. We're gonna go underground again, and we're gonna see Neanderthals again. It's time. Oh, it's time. It's time for some ancient subterranean hominin bits. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's start by looking at these structures themselves in the main chamber. And I should clarify, when I say structures, there's 6 altogether down here. 2 that are called annular structures. Basically these 2 roundish circle structures you're seeing here with the empty space in the middle. Then there's 4 smaller accumulation structures. Now all of these, from the 2 big circular ring ones to the 4 smaller piles basically, are made up of stalagmites. Literally stalagmites taken from within the cave that were deliberately broken off to use in this construction, and we'll talk more about the stalagmites individually here in a second. But for now, focusing on these structures. The largest of the annular structures, the 2 big circular ones, is 6.7 by 4.5 meters across. The smaller is 2.2 by 2.1 meters across. The 4 accumulation structures range from being 0.55 of a meter to 2.60 meters in diameter. 2 of these accumulation structures, these piles, are located within the largest of the annular structures, and 2 are located outside of it. And you can see from looking at these pictures, I think, an idea of the scale of this construction, all of which, again, is being done, remember, outside of the reach of natural light. It's in the dark or by firelight. And now let's look at those stalagmites, because oh my goodness, over half of the stalagmite fragments used are chunks deliberately taken from the middle of stalagmites, so they're not just using broken up hunks from the tip of one. Very few pieces altogether are whole stalagmites, less than 5%. They're described as being, quote, well calibrated with a mean length of 34.4 centimeters for the largest annular structure and 29.5 centimeters for the small annular structure, thus strongly suggesting intentional construction. And again, I just have to stress here the scale. Altogether, for total stalagmite usage across all of these structures here, they used around 400 pieces of stalagmite, comprising a total length of 112.4 meters and an average weight of 2.2 tons of calcite, the mineral that makes up these stalagmites. Like, that amount of weight and stone being moved is just mind-boggling. Now, marks nearby on the floor of the cave show where some of these stalagmites were wrenched from, but honestly, that makes up a minority. For a large part, we don't know where most of these stalagmites were actually taken from. Now, the 2 annular structures are composed of 1 to 4 superposed layers of carefully aligned stalagmite hunks. Some smaller pieces were placed on the inside of the layers as if to support them. Other stalagmites seem to be placed vertically aligned to add support to the structure around. Traces of fire was found on all 6 of the structures. 57 of the stalagmite pieces, what archaeologists studying the place refer to in their research as speleophax, showed reddening and fissures in their surface from prolonged fire damage, and 66 were blackened, all of which had been burned as well. Now, I will say at this point, there is no cave art or anything like that has been found yet in here at all. But as you can see, we already have quite a lot here to work with, but also a lot of questions. But maybe first we should talk about dating a little bit. In the 1990s, when they first started doing excavation down here, they took one of these burned bone fragments they found in the structure and did radiocarbon dating on it, and found that there was no radioactive carbon material left in it, meaning that these burned bones and the structure had to date to at least before 50,000 years ago, which hit the limit of carbon dating. Research was meant to go on beyond that, but the lead archaeologist at the site at the time in 1999 unfortunately passed away. At that point, work there for quite some time halted, but in more recent years, a multidisciplinary team went down there and looked at the calcite accumulation on the stalagmites that had gathered there since they were put there by the Neanderthals when the whole thing was constructed, and were able to positively date that these structures were built by people well over 175,000 years ago. And as you're seeing now, that's a conservative estimate. And this is incredible and brings us back to, well, how do we know that Neanderthals built this? Well, that's because Neanderthals got to Europe a long time before we did. They were here on the continent at least 400,000 years ago. We modern Homo sapiens only got here around 54,000 years ago. That means it couldn't have been Homo sapiens that built these structures. It had to have been Neanderthals. They were the only ones here at this time. This is mind-blowing, and like I said, makes it one of the oldest known constructions of any kind in human history, by any type of human. But what does it all mean? I mentioned in the intro a little bit that this whole main chamber area isn't exactly easy to get to. Some of that initial entryway passage you have to get on all fours to crawl through. This is truly a deep, dark part of the cave, and if you look at this map that I'm showing you here now, you can see that it extends far enough. There's even its own little lake in there. And so far, no other access has been identified but that one entrance that we know of. But despite this one entrance and its quite difficult to get to location, the researchers do think that the Neanderthals were coming back here for potentially thousands of years. But yeah, eventually the Neanderthals would have stopped coming here. And like I said, this cave ended up closing due to natural causes in the Pleistocene, and it seems that us, modern Homo sapiens, never got in here. So when these cavers came in and discovered all this in the 1990s, they were literally the first Homo sapiens to ever lay eyes on what you're seeing right now. The Neanderthals that built this would have never seen one of us. So that makes trying to figure out what all this was for a lot harder. Like we talked about in my Thorn episode, Neanderthals in some ways, though they were so much like us, and I'm not saying this in a judgmental tone, they were also clearly working on a different mindset, I guess, or world viewpoint than you and I are right now. Again, I don't mean that in a derogatory way at all. Very pro-Neanderthal channel, as we've discussed. They were clearly capable of art and symbolic thought and abstract thought, but they've left us none here. Some archaeologists have cautioned against reading too much into these structures, pointing out that even chimps and orangutans can build structures in the wild, but again, looking at the amount of weight and time it would have taken to move and make all this, and the difficulty just in getting here to do so, this was clearly a massive undertaking. And while we do have other ancient structures like this built by ancient hominins, nothing to this scale and not in this deep cave setting. And it's proved something of a contentious topic in the archaeological community. One person I read in a news article even tried to suggest, well, maybe this is all built by cave bears, which makes absolutely no sense to me, considering the evidence that I just told you about the careful positioning of the still. Anyway, I think that person was just not thinking hard today. This is clearly a deliberate construction, and an amazing one. Researchers working on a study for Nature.com summed up some of the important questions about our structures, saying, quote, "What was the function of these structures at such a great distance from the cave entrance? Why are most of the fireplaces found on the structures rather than directly on the cave floor? Based on most Upper Paleolithic cave incursions, we could assume that they represent some kind of symbolic or ritual behavior, but could they rather have served for an unknown domestic use, or simply as a refuge? The Neanderthal group responsible for these constructions had a level of social organization that was more complex than previously thought for this hominid species." End quote. And to be honest, guys, I want to say here, we're kind of getting to the edge of our knowledge here and what we know. There's one stalagmite tip that was found partially hollowed out, and I'll put a link in my sources to a research paper on a lot of this that has some more in-depth details on just some cool stuff about the cave. But honestly, this is getting to the point where we're going to have to wait and see. What are your guys' thoughts? I am tempted. I was just making fun of a lady for overusing the word ritual the other day. But there is so much deep symbolic meaning in caves. And this is so mysterious. I don't know. I could see it, though, being maybe for some practical use, too. This is just more evidence that points to what we've known in recent years and that we talked about earlier in the episode, that Neanderthals were so much more complex and intelligent than we used to give them credit for. You know, they've recently found evidence of them using colored ochres and shells for body ornamentation and to spiffy themselves up. I don't know, this is an incredibly amazing sight. I feel like privileged that we're part of the generation that gets to see this wonderful thing that humans never before 1990 has ever seen. We get to look at pictures of this. We get to find out all about it as the archaeologists do their thing. This is such a gift. I know there's a lot of crummy stuff going on in the world right now, but we have to acknowledge these wonderful things too. My goodness, guys, this is so lovely. And hopefully we will hear more soon. As always, I will keep you posted of anything new that comes out about this wonderful place. But I am going to stop there for today. Guys, let me know, like I said, what your thoughts are on this. It's such an unprecedented sight. Like, it's one of those few places you can't, like, that is unprecedented. There's nothing else quite like this in the world. Absolutely incredible. And if you find yourself still particularly interested in our topic today, then just like always, guys, please don't let my words be the last words you hear on the ancient French Neanderthals. Or any kind of Neanderthals, really. I don't want to play favorites here. They all sound cool. They all sound great. Wish I could have met them. Well, anyway, but the point is, if you go to the library, you might find a book on them. You'll definitely find a book on something. That's what they're for. And that's just great. Just go. Go find something good to read. Something cool. And come back and tell me all about it. Tell me what you found that's good this time. And once you're back from the library, if you'd like to and you enjoyed what you saw here today, then consider checking out the rest of my channel, where you'll find lots more unusual and mysterious tales from our past. I upload new videos every week and longer deep dive videos once a month. And I did miss these bits. We need to do more of these bits. I love them. Okay, but I'm sorry. I'll stop carrying on. Hopefully I'll see you again soon. But either way, thank you again so much for being here today. Be safe, be happy, go with all my love. Until next time, goodbye.